You're now on the road beyond. I'm Todd Duplantis. Thanks for joining us Facebook Live. We've got a great show for the next half hour or so. Ike McFadden, my co-host, usually is here on Wednesday nights, but he is out this week on vacation. We've got Derrel Sims as a special guest host. He is known as the Alien Hunter. Welcome back to the show, Derrel.
I'm delighted to be here.
Good to have you with us. Last episode, we were talking cryptids. This episode, we're going to be talking more cryptids. So we've got a great show lined up. We're joined tonight by Jason Offutt. He is an author who also teaches journalism at Northwest Missouri State University. He's the author of 4 books on paranormal topics, including Haunted Missouri and Paranormal Missouri, in addition to several novels. He's been interviewed on Whitley Strieber's Dreamland, Darkness Radio, and other prominent paranormal podcasts, now including this one. His latest book is called Chasing American Monsters, and he also does a special service to the field of cryptozoology with this brand new book by keeping us up to date with incredibly informed, beyond the scope of lesser guidebooks. We have a better head start of knowing where to look for these cryptids. He is highly recommended by Lauren Coleman, who many are familiar with as a cryptozoologist. And he joins us on the show tonight. Welcome to the show, Jason Offutt. Thanks for being here, Jason.
Hey, Todd, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
You're a journalism professor, you know. I was a journalist many moons ago. How are the students these days? I know when I went to college, everybody wanted to be a news anchor or a reporter. Hopefully people have different aspirations and goals in the field now.
Well, right. We've got it. It's different than it used to be. I was a newspaper editor for 17 years. The field is now that you just can't be one thing. Yeah. Even if you want to be a reporter, you're also going to be a photographer. You're also going to be a videographer. Even if you're working for a newspaper, you've got to do videography and host a news podcast as well. So we get a rather diverse group of kids in.
Well, your new book, of course, talks about chasing American monsters. Let's talk about meeting with American cryptids. We'll go through a few of the states. Let's start with Texas. What are we known for here in Texas?
Well, you've got the Goatman in Fort Worth, the Fort Worth monster. Have you heard of that one, the Fort Worth Lake monster?
I have not. Derrel, have you heard of these, the Goatman or the Lake monster?
I have heard of the Dogman. I'd love to hear his view of that. Tell us about it.
All right. Well, it's the Lake Worth monster. This was there are all sorts of all these stories, all these legends come with their urban legend about how they were created, and they often differ. One of the legends is there was a farmer, local farmer way back in the 1800s, who was known by the locals as the Goat Man because he raised goats. And people would steal the goats, and eventually he was killed during one of the raids. But people have reported seeing since then, especially one specific case in 1969, have reported seeing a satyr like entity, the human trunk, human face, goat horns, and the bottom half of a goat. And it's been around Lake Worth. There was even a picture taken of the Lake Worth monster back in 1969. A group of teenagers were partying by the lake, and the goat man threw a tire at them.
Wow. Yeah. You also have in your book something about a Maine goat man. Are these cryptids obviously seen across the country?
Yes. The main one seen across the country, of course, is Bigfoot. It's been seen in 49 states. The only state it hasn't been seen in is Hawaii. When it comes to Goatman, there's a legend in Missouri. There's one in Virginia. There's one, I believe, in Pennsylvania as well. There's a sheep squatch in West Virginia. So, I mean, a lot of people can wrap their head around Bigfoot because it's reported to be an ape man. Goat man, not so much. But there are a rash of them around the country and have been for hundreds of years.
Jason, Are there is the term dogman a new term for werewolves?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, if we actually knew what these things really were, because we don't know if they're werewolves. We don't know if they're, cryptid dogs that can walk on their hind legs. But they sure sound like werewolves. I've interviewed a few people who've encountered dogmen, and their cases sound like werewolves. However, one person I interviewed, the case was, I mean, it was a dog. It was just a dog that stood up on its hind legs and stared as it walked across the road. So, I mean, what these creatures are is anybody's guess.
Speaking of dogs, want to talk about a creature that we've heard a lot, and Derrel has a little personal story about this involving the Chupacabra. Derrel, you wanna talk a bit about this, and we'll get Jason's take on it.
Well, basically, a rancher and one of my UFO people got together, and the rancher told me he had shot something. He said, I'm not sure what it is. It's not a coyote. I'm not sure what it is. It's dog-like. It's blue. It has almost no hair on it. And he said, I think it's probably some type of mixture of a coyote or something. But the problem is it likes my horses and the horses like him. And he finally shot him, and I've got him in my freezer currently. But we're going to do some DNA testing and find out exactly what the thing is. But it's one of the oddest looking things I've ever seen. And I've had hunters look at it who hunt coyotes, and they said, my God, look at the teeth on that thing. What is that?
Well, I've got a couple of pizzas in my freezer. I don't have anything like that. The Chupacabra is relatively, I mean, compared to Bigfoot or Dogman, it is relatively recent, and stemmed from Puerto Rico, but there have been so many cases of people describing the same type of creature throughout northern Mexico and the southern United States that I think that there has to be something there. Unfortunately, whenever a news story pops up with people saying I shot a Chupacabra or I found one on my property, it ends up being a dog or a coyote with mange. Wow. And they tend to look like that too. Their skin has, sort of a bluish tinge, and they don't have any hair. And seeing animals with mange, they're pretty bizarre looking.
Yeah. Let me ask you about this. I want to go back to the Dogman thing, because a lot of people kind of slough this off, but it seems like from what I've been reading and what I've been hearing, are Dogman reports going up over the last couple of centuries or last couple of decades? Because they're certainly making a lot of news nowadays.
Yes, absolutely. They are going up. One of the interesting phenomena is that whenever a new cryptid or paranormal entity comes up, there's a rash of sightings. It happened with black-eyed kids back in the late 90s. There was a report, a guy from Texas, a journalist named Brian Bethel was the first person to report black-eyed children, and they kind of exploded for a couple of decades, and you don't hear much about them anymore. It's the same thing with the Dogmen. I think one of the first cases was reported in Michigan, and they've kind of exploded. I don't know if it's people misidentifying things, but I don't know how you can misidentify a dog walking on its hind legs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Derrel, you're familiar. You mentioned the black-eyed children. I want to get into that. Derrel, you familiar with the whole black-eyed children stories?
I am familiar with it, and some of the people who report them on picking them up on the roads and this sort of thing. They seem to be they're kind of like these cryptids. They just disappear, and people say they often will ask permission to get in the car or to come into your house, this sort of thing. And most people are afraid of them, and they simply drive off and leave them, that sort of thing. But I'm sure Jason can address that from his point of view.
Well, yeah, I've interviewed a lot of people. I talked, like I said, Brian Bethel, the journalist from Texas, is the first one to report them. And I talked to him. I interviewed him about this, I don't know, about 7 years ago. and he still stands by what he saw back in, like, I think it was 98, that yes, your description is right. They've got black eyes. They asked permission to be let into a car or let into a house, or, can I walk with you? That sort of thing. They are anywhere from like 7 years old to their mid to late teens. They tend to be unkempt. Dirty, greasy hair, bad breath. They're wearing clothes that are 30 years out of date. They talk much more maturely than a kid that age should talk, and they always need help. And people tend to want to help them because, if you're gonna infiltrate or invade someplace, you want to appear as somebody sympathetic to a grown up. Right. So people initially want to help them out, and then they see that there's no whites to their eyes and get terrified, and they don't let them in their house. I'm sure there are cases where they have, but I don't know what happened to people after that.
I've heard some cases where people who have let them in have become physically ill and trying to get the kids out. Let me ask you this too: with an entity like the black-eyed children, would you compare this? And I'll start with Derrel. Would you compare this with something like the Men in Black, with this type of strange entity? And that's going to lead on to our next subject with the shadow people.
Well, actually, the Men in Black phenomena is twofold, in my opinion. If the stories are to be believed, and some of them I certainly know are true, there is an alien version of that, and then there is a military-led version of it, which is probably induced by the intelligence community, especially back in the 50s, where we were terrified of these people. But the alien version of that is that they are again unkempt, strange demeanor, and they ask some of the strangest questions, and sometimes pull people over on the road as if they were police officers.
Right.
And everybody in the car is just mesmerized by their presence. So there seems to be something adult-like, so to speak, compared to the black-eyed children and the MIBs, the Men in Black. But my general theory is that the Men in Black are related to the alien phenomena, and when there is a problem the alien can't solve or resolve, they send them.
Jason, do you think the two may be connected or similar type of entities?
Well, there's similarities. There definitely are similarities. I completely agree with that. I don't know if there's enough to connect them. When it comes to a lot of paranormal entities, I've debated back and forth a lot of things, and either everything's connected or nothing's connected in my head. But just like I said, when there's more attention paid, when people start talking about black-eyed kids or Men in Black or Dogmen or other phenomena, they tend to show up more. Maybe they are all the same. It's the same entity. They just change their appearance to match whatever's popular in human media at the time.
Could they be grays as well?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was compiling a book on black-eyed kids, and my my wife, who's also one of my editors, told me, she said, Jason, all these paranormal things you write about, I'm okay with them, except the black-eyed kids. And if you write a book on this and they come knocking on our door, it's your ass. So I abandoned that, but still, I've interviewed quite a few people over the years about the black-eyed kids, and yeah, it really seems that they're, they're I'm convinced there's something to it. Exactly what they are, I don't know.
Tell us about your book, The Shadow People.
Darkness Walks, The Shadow People Among Us. Yes. I was about 8 years old, and I saw shadow people in my house. I had no idea what they were called. I just know that one night when I went to bed, I turned the light off. And since I grew up out in the country, we could, keep our blinds open because there weren't any peeping Toms, for miles. Mm-hmm. So when the moon was out, I could see the Farrah Fawcett poster on my wall, which, shows you how old I am. But one night I saw one corner of my room, something moved. and I was scared to death. And a man, a cutout, it looked like a refrigerator magnet of a man, walked out of my wall and through my room and out into the hallway. And I saw them off and on for a couple of months. And then I've never seen one since, thankfully. But I thought it was just me because I'd never heard of them before until the 90s. And I wrote a story about them, and I got flooded with emails from people, in the late 90s, maybe it was the early 2000s, but I got flooded with emails from people who had a similar experience. And so I did some research. I interviewed various religious experts from different religions and physicists, and then I interviewed a bunch of people who have experienced them, and I tried to answer some questions, and I got some more questions, but I came to some personal conclusions about them.
Right, and it seems like the Dogmen, shadow people reports are blossoming now as well. And, I've seen some pretty good videos out there on the internet. A lot of them faked, but some of them are pretty questionable out there. Anything you've seen out there that kind of makes you think that they...
Yeah, here's the thing. Since I teach in the mass media department, we do a lot of things with cameras. We do a lot of things with editing techniques. We do a lot of things with Photoshop when it comes to still photography, and it's pretty convincing looking. Yeah. So I don't trust any video. I don't trust any pictures. Unless the picture was from 1940, I don't necessarily trust it.
Right. I get you. Yeah. My day job is a director of Houston Community College's television station. So I'm right there with you. Yeah. We know where it comes from. Let's talk about haunted Missouri. You've written a couple of paranormal books about Missouri.
Hey, because that's where I'm from. Yeah. Haunted Missouri. That was my first foray into paranormal writing. I've always been interested in books about ghosts. I love ghost stories. And all the books that I've read have been about personal residences. And the problem is, if I want to go check that out, I'm going to be staring in somebody's window for, at 3:00 in the morning.
Right.
And I don't want to stare in somebody's window at 3:00 in the morning. So what I did is I went out and found as many haunted places as I could that were open to the public. So, there's a number of universities. There's Mark Twain Cave, Pythian Castle in Springfield, a couple of Civil War battlefields. And so and in it, I've not only got the history, I've got interviews with people who've seen ghosts, and I've got directions. So basically it's a haunted guidebook to haunted places in the state. I was even contacted by somebody who read my book, and I had a story of a chapel that was haunted, and they asked me for more information because they wanted to get married there.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How do you kill a monster?
How do you kill a monster? I have no clue. I would absolutely hate to run into a Bigfoot with my car. I've hit a deer with my car, and that's 150 pounds. If a Bigfoot is 800 pounds, I don't want to do that.
Oh my.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm on the, and I got some criticism for doing this. I wrote an essay once on Bigfoot about what it's going to take, because anything paranormal or supernatural, whatever you want to call it, is going to take scientific evidence. And when it comes to Bigfoot, it's going to take a body. And I wrote about, I'm okay with somebody putting a bullet in his head, but I don't want any more killed.
Yeah.
But if you want it proven, that's going to have to happen.
Well, there's been some people who've claimed to have shot Bigfoot, and they've been skewered on national radio programs for coming forward with that. I'm sure you've heard about that. Yeah. Jason, where can people find you on the web? And your books are all available, I imagine, on Amazon, on your website as well?
Yes, you can find me. My website is Jason Offutt. That's OFFUTT.com. And all my books are on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and on my website.
Jason Offutt, author, and joining us here on our show. We appreciate you being here. Thanks, Jason. We'd love to talk to you again.
Hey, anytime. Just give me an invite. I'd be happy to be back. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our news. And Derrel, as we mentioned, Ike is taking a short break, but he had a chance while he's in the Gulf of Mexico doing a little fishing to file this report. He knew the shows we were doing on cryptozoology, so he's in search of a cryptid himself. Take a look.
Hello, Todd. As you know, I am in Florida on the semi-annual Road Beyond podcast Sea Monster Expedition. Now, we're here on the Gulf Coast of Florida looking for Gulfie, the Gulf Coast sea monster. Now, granted, day 1 and 2 of the expedition did not go well at all, but I have hope for the future. And that is because we recently met with the Road Beyond's local sea monster expert in the area. I say expert, it was someone who I met in the liquor store line about 10 p.m. last night by the name of Skippy. Now, Skippy, he says to me, "Oh, Gulfie, the Gulf Coast sea monster. Yes, she from the top up is a beautiful woman, and then from the waist down is a donkey. And we don't entirely know how she swims," he says. But swim she does, and if you want to see Gulfie, well, what you do is you go to Point Muldoon around midnight at the high tide. And you got to be very quiet, and if you hear, coming from the ocean, the sound of a donkey, well then, sir, you're about to have a magical encounter with Gulfie, the Gulf Coast sea monster. So certainly I'm going to be taking my camera with me, and we'll see how that goes. In other news, there have been a lot of sightings in the area of the notorious serial killer Robert F. Kennedy. I will keep you posted.
I can tell you so far, Derrel, he has not found the cryptid Gulfie in the Gulf of Mexico. So
I hope not.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll report on that next week. He's good at finding experts at liquor stores, apparently, though, at 10 o'clock at night. All right. On to our news for the day of news for this week. Here's a look at some of the weird, tantalizing, and just plain bizarre stories posted by our partners at the Full Spectrum Project. Okay, this first story, Derrel, comes to us from Anomalien. Now, it seems that a woman in Maine is claiming to have communicated as a child with a family of Bigfoot. Are there multiple Bigfoots known as Big Feet, Bigfoot? I don't know. We're going to call them a family of Bigfoot. But the woman who goes by the name of Susie says she was about 7 when she met a large Bigfoot male she named Wabu. Now, he had 2 smaller offspring. How she knew they were his kids, I don't know. But anyway, she's not sure of their names as well. Susie says she communicated with the Bigfoot family until the early 70s when she lost contact with them. She says Wabu was covered in fur that looked like dark red wool and had big, strong teeth that she later learned was perfect for chomping on mollusks, and something she says the family enjoyed. Now, Susie claims Bigfoot loved swimming and eventually taught her to swim. And she even played hide and seek with the family, and she taught them how to play cards. Yeah, she also claims they had a very foul odor, as many Bigfoot have been rumored to have. And she'd make them take a bath before she started hanging out with them each time. So that is according to a story in Anomalien. Interesting. What do you think? Family of Bigfoot? I'm just going to say, Derrel, I'm just not buying this one.
It's difficult to swallow, that one. It's really big. There are several folks I know very well who claim they've had contact with Bigfoot. I don't know that they have or not. I have no evidence of that. They've not furnished me with any physical evidence of that claim, except one person. One person has furnished me with a fingernail, a small fingernail, and a urine sample of an adolescent Bigfoot. That was the claim. Is it true or not? I don't know. That's the reason I love physical evidence, is because you can always take it to someone like Dr. Melvin Ketchum in Nacogdoches, who did the studies on Bigfoot and proved that, in fact, that Bigfoot is real and the DNA is correct. So that's my next move, is to take it to someone like that to get it authenticated or disproven.
Right. I mean, just recently there was a Bigfoot conference in Nebraska, and apparently they had a Russian Bigfoot expert who got on stage said he was going to call his partner over the cell phone, calls this guy in Russia. They start talking in Russia. There's a creature in the background grunting, and he says he's translating a conversation he's having with a Bigfoot through his partner. So then you got guys like that out there making claims, which are just making things harder on people who are trying to do hard research.
It really is awful. There was one a police officer retired. He was a foot expert. He actually can look at. They brought him Bigfoot prints and things like that, and he discounted many of them. Several of them, he absolutely said they're 100% totally true. He said, I don't believe in all this stuff. I don't care about it. Don't have any interest in it. But he said, whatever that thing is, it's simian and it's huge and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And he validated it. He said, but I don't believe in this stuff, but that is real. And he said, it's not an ape.
Well, until we, as our last guest, Jason Offutt said, until we have a body, it's going to be tough to prove it. Otherwise, it's still a legend. Hey, Derrel, our next story is actually coming to us from a guest who was on our show last week. He's an author, Brian Clune, and you can find him on Facebook. But he's written several paranormal books, and he now works with Planet Paranormal. Now, Clune recently visited the Apache Death Cave in Winslow, Arizona. He reported that he arrived there by himself around sunset. He says when he entered the cave, he announced his arrival to the spirits within. He then started shooting photos, and here's where things got interesting. Many of those photos we're showing to you right now. He claims while he was shooting pictures, something grabbed his wrist around his watch, pulled his arm back, and he was left with a nasty scratch as he documented in one of the photos. Now, as was for those of you who may not be familiar with this site, Apache Death Cave is hidden near the outskirts of Two Guns, not far from the abandoned campground. As legend tells it, in 1878, Apaches raided two Navajo camps along the Little Colorado River, plundering their food and supplies and killing everyone except 3 girls whom they kidnapped. Horrible scene, but apparently, Derrel, there's still some unwelcoming spirits that are still around that cave.
Well, now that's entirely possible. I spoke 2 years ago to the Dulce Apache Indian Reservation at their conference, and it was the last one they held. And I listened to some stories, and I held a conference just for the natives to speak. And had everybody turn off their recorders and everything because they wouldn't speak with them on. And as soon as they turned them off, they told some of the most horrific stories. Because listen, whenever I hear stuff from a lot of New Agers and others, oh, the Indians love the aliens, the star people, they're this, they're that. That's not what we heard at the Dulce Apache Indian Reservation. They told stories that stood the hair up on the back of your neck. And one particular person who was a former intelligence operative himself told me personally that he was suicidal as a result of his events and wanted help. And I told him I would help him.
Some incredible stories. Derrel, you've got some great stories. Folks can find you on the web at, is it alienhunter.org?
That is correct, sir.
We got to do this again sometime. Maybe we'll do some other shows in the future.
I love it. You are the best of the best.
We appreciate you being here. Derrel Sims, the Alien Hunter, our special guest host tonight. Ike McFadden, if we can get him off the Gulf of Mexico away from that fishing boat, he'll be back on the show next week. We want to remind everyone, thanks for watching our Facebook Live. Make sure you like our Facebook page. Check us out on Twitter. You can find us at road_beyond. Follow us there. And also, most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are found at the Road Beyond podcast on YouTube. I'm Todd Duplantis. Thanks for joining me on the Road Beyond. I'll see you next time.